So, Higurashi.
Yep.
It's,
More like when I cry.
got him. More like 3 gunshot sound effects while zooming in on a face.
Dun, dun, dun.
So, let's just get this out of the way. What do you guys think? I think of this show.
I think you like it, but it's probably not your favorite.
I think you have a fondness for it, but I don't think you like it that much. I think you're just like, yeah, that's neat.
Okay, I love it. I fucking love Higurashi, guys.
Okay, well, I feel better about that now, because I fucking also love this, so high five, Spooky. Where friendship is restored.
I was, like, anticipating this, because I knew. As soon as I picked it, I was like, Deer loves this.
The fucking friendship ended from Deer from, like, last week or whatever, is like, friendship restored.
I am gonna start by saying that this is going to be a series that we revisit with later seasons.
Okay.
So...
Oh boy.
Yeah, oh boy, indeed.
Well, do you want to explain why there's later seasons?
As I like to explain it, I always say season 1 is the what the fuck, and then season 2 is the here's what the fuck, and then I haven't decided what we're gonna watch yet, but for sure at least season 2 we'll pull in a few episodes from. But yeah, and I mean, out of context, it's gonna be... out of context in 3 episodes is really hard with the show. So yeah, it is hard to follow. But
it's really hard to like this show when I've only seen 3 episodes out of context.
Yeah, and
it's really difficult.
Spoiler, I was, like, struggling to pay attention.
Yeah. Should we just kind of mention why he needs context, Spooky? Because that's the whole basis of this fucking anime. Literally.
So, episode 3, we open up with
Message me what
a
you
guy
mean
on the phone with some older man. And he's like, hey, the missing kid is this Satoshi person. And we get zoom on the kid who's like, what? And then he's like talking about some shit, and then it's like, oh no, there's an evil girl, gotta zoom in on her, and then, I don't know, we go straight to an intro with someone licking blood, and then people naked in water. Yeah, it's an anime intro. Something about butterflies and cicadas. You know, it's a metaphor.
Maybe.
Then the protagonist's mother, I assume, or carer, or guardian, I don't care, is like, hey, you look pale, you look sick, you got a flu. Oh, by the way, someone's at the door for you, it's the girl. Some girl. And it's like, man, it's really hot in this place, there's cicadas everywhere. Heat really is some sort of through line with this series, 'cause it's hot, and then he's at a doctor, and the doctor's like, well, you've got a cold, I'm gonna give you a shot. And he's like, wow, cool, and while he's sitting in a waiting room, the protagonist hears 3 older ladies talking to each other about gossip and demons stealing a girl away, but really she just eloped or something. I don't know, I was struggling to keep up, because it's like, everything in this show is either like exposition dumped so quickly about things that if you don't already understand what it's about, you're gonna miss it, or it's like something actually interesting happening with weird fucking zooms. It's a time.
Yeah.
Okay, anyway. Then we cut to the protagonist having lunch with older man who I've dubbed Exposition Grandpa. Because that's all he does. In every single scene that we see him in these 3 episodes, he's just Exposition Man.
Well, isn't he
and he's like,
dead in one episode?
I don't fucking know.
Yeah.
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 and he's
missing.
like, oh, hey, this happened, and someone dies every year or something, and there's some disappearances going on, and they're related to your group of friends protagonist or something. They're related, and the protagonist gets angry and is like, no, what? That's not true. Zoom, zoom. Oh, nani? And then Grandpa's like, whoa, calm down, you fucking kid. You're gonna attract attention. And kid's like, what? Shut up. He's like, the last girl that went missing, or did the missings, or killings, or whatever, she shattered all the windows in some place, probably a school. I was not paying attention. So they took her to a neurologist, and the neurologist gave her drug. So, cool. And he's like, well, you better watch out, you're probably in danger now, too. While he's slurping his coffee. And so now the protagonist is back at home, and he's like, shit scared. And he's like, locking up everything, and is like, I'm gonna die, I'm gonna fucking die. He gets a knock at the door, and oh shit, it's two random girls. Oh no, they've come to murder him. Nope, just kidding, they've come to talk to him. They're like, hey, you okay? You weren't at school today? You still sick? He's like, yeah, I'm fine. And they're like, here, have some food that someone made, eat it. And he's like, okay, whatever. And then they get possessed and have cat eyes, and are like, haha, you didn't come to school, you better come to school tomorrow, or you're gonna regret it. And it's like, okay, so something seems to be going on to do with some sort of hive mind possession type thing, or it's all in his head, or it's something going on with the village, or something, I don't know. Anyway, they leave, and he starts eating the food, and it's like, yummy meatballs. But oh no, he goes, and goes backwards, spits out the food, and there's a sewing needle in one of the meatballs. So he throws it against the wall, and then gets angry and goes, "Rah!" and throws everything against the wall. By the way, the meatballs were labeled A to E for some reason, and he ate the E one first, which I'm assuming is why he got the needle in it. If he ate it A to E, there wouldn't be the needle in it, so it's his fault. And then he's like, they aren't gonna erase me, I'm gonna write a fucking suicide note and put it behind a clock. That'll save me. So he's like, hi, my name is this, and I'm gonna be killed because of fucking shit. And then he tapes it up behind a clock that's up against the wall that no one's gonna look at. Whatever. Anyway, it's the next day, and he's going to school, and, like, he's talking to some old lady, and she's like, blah, 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 and he's like, blah, blah, blah. And, he walks past a van, and the van driver's like, huh. And the van magically turns around on a narrow road and starts driving towards him at high speed. And he gets deer in the headlights. Zoom, zoom. Oh, Nani jumps out of the way just in time. And the van driver goes, ugh, shame. And keeps driving. And the guy's like, what the fuck's going on? People are trying to kill me. Was that a hit and run? Anyway, he goes to school and he's like, I'm gonna defend myself. So he looks through all the lockers and finds a baseball bat. And he's like, yeah, this is it. I'm gonna kill people with this. Some small children come up to him and like, hey, how you doing? And he's like, I've got a baseball bat. Fuck off. And they're like, oh, okay. You, what? Then at lunchtime, he's swinging his baseball bat. And then two girls come up to him and are like, you okay? And he's like, I'm swinging my baseball bat. And they're like, oh, okay. Crazy boy. And then at the end of school, they're like, hey, let's fucking play in the club. Play some games after school. And he's like, no, I just want to go home. And they're like, wow, you fucking misogynist. You fucking piece of shit man. You don't like women. You don't want to play with girls. You fucking misogynist. And he's like, milady. And he starts running home with his baseball bat. And one of the girls follows him. And he's like, stop following me. And she's like, no. And then he's like, stop following me. And she's like, no. And then he's like, stop following me. And she's like, no. And he's like, stop following me. And she's like, no. And then he's like, stop following me. And she's like, no. And then he's like, stop following me. And she's like, no. And then he's like, stop following me. And she's like, no.
Gamb.
And he's like, stop following me. And she's like, but I'm going the same way you are because that's where my home is. And he's like, okay, you go in front then. And then he's like, keep walking. And she's like, no. And then he's like, keep walking. And she's like, no.
No.
And then he's like, keep walking. And she's like, why do you have the boy who went missing's baseball bat? And he's like, well, nani, zoom, zoom. And she's like, you're doing everything he did before he went missing. And he's like, what? And she's like, he grabbed a baseball bat after never playing sport and started swinging it around at lunch, and then started isolating himself, and then walked to school by himself and walked home by himself. And he's like, you're not going to transfer like he did, right? And he's like, what? What happened to him? Did he transfer? And then she gets possessed and is like, you're not going to transfer. And he's like, transfer? And then suddenly, exposition grandpa, we're at home. The kid's protagonist is shit scared, so he locks up the house, closes the curtains. Everything's locked up. He's watching TV. He's like, calls up exposition grandpa, and he's like, bro, someone's trying to kill me. First there was a needle in a thing, and the grandpa's like, cool, do you have the needle? We can use that as evidence to, like, find out what's going on. And he's like, cool, let me just go check. Oh no, my parents cleaned up the kitchen where I threw the meatball and didn't leave it. So, the needle's gone. And he's like, oh well. He's like, what else happened? He's like, I nearly got run over by a van. He's like, did you get the license plate? And he's like, well, we can't fucking do anything unless we have evidence. And he's like, oh, well, I'm sure it's fine. I'm sure, like, I'm not at risk in my life. Everything's fine. And then suddenly we cut, zoom, zoom, ding dong. There's a girl at the door. Oh no, she's gonna kill him. And that's the end of the episode.
Yeah. Pretty much.
Yeah, so, I'm just gonna kind of mildly explain these arcs as we go through the episodes. Because I think it'll be easier that way. So, that arc ends with her, at that scene, she, like, goes to his house and she, like, tries to open the door and he, like, slams the door on her fucking fingers and is like, get the fuck away from me. And then he doesn't go to school. And then her and the green-haired girl, Rena and Mion, they both show up to his house, like, the next day. And they come into his room and, they're like, hey, like, how are you doing? And stuff. And then they start seeming real, possessed again, whatever. And Rena holds him behind his arms and Mion, pulls out a syringe to inject him with it, and he beats them both to death with a baseball bat. And then he sees that the mysterious men in the van are, like, outside of his house, so he flees his house, where they won't see him, and he runs to a phone booth, and he calls, who you call Exposition Grandpa, and, Exposition Grandpa's like, yo, what the fuck's going on? And he's, like, clearly lost his mind, and he starts scratching at his own throat, and kills himself by scratching through his throat, and then losing blood.
Wait, so who does that? Is it the protagonist or the other guy who went missing?
The protagonist. Satoshi,
okay, so he kills
the guy
himself.
who went missing is, like, long gone. You don't see him at all. He's been gone for, like, a couple years.
No, don't say that, because we do see him in a future episode, remember?
Sure. But yeah, so, Keiichi, scratches his own throat out, essentially, and dies from it. So, it's pretty cool.
Yeah.
But then, what? The next episode we see is alive again. Weird, right?
Wow, spoilers.
So anyway, dear, episode 13?
Yeah, so it's episode 13. Protag isn't dead, and he's staring into the ceiling, thinking about beating up a man with a bat, and he's like, it was a dream, it's fine. So he goes out to his shed and grabs an axe, ready to kill a dude. But when he walks outside, he has a moment and hears something behind him, but actually it was nothing. And then there's the anime intro. And when he gets to the house he's going to, there's no bike there, so he knows something happened, and so he goes inside, and it's really, really messy. And yesterday's dinner for two is on the table, and it isn't touched, so he's like, I guess something happened. And then there's weird noise in the bath, so he checks. And Satoko had some rice on her shirt, and he's worried, but there's so much steam that he can't really see what's going on.
Her clothes so dirty.
Yeah.
There's rice on.
She is basically in the bath counting to a number. She's at like 5,000. And she's basically dying from overheating because she was forced to stay in the bath by, I believe her uncle is the relationship? Yeah, her uncle. Because if I remember correctly, because I've seen this before, he's abusive and shitty?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. And he was basically telling her to stay in the bath and count to 10,000. Because her body would overheat. It's abuse. So Protag starts screaming, wants to kill him, starts to axe everything around the house, but he's not there. So then he picks her up and they go to the clinic. But there's some police outside the door and that's weird. So he puts her in a bush and checks it out. And someone was having mania and shit and being treated for breathing weird and he died. And then a call comes over the radio and the police are like, yeah, it was a sleeping pill suicide thing. And it was the doctor, apparently, the coach doctor, that...
he was a doctor? Oh, I shouldn't ask this. I've never even knew who he was.
Dr. Erie, the girl really, really was close to. And there's also, like, a search going on for someone, and then the little girl cries because she doesn't understand what's happening, and he's like, oops, I told him to die, so now he's dead. That's my fault. And she's like, no, that's not what happened. And he still wants to take her to the clinic, but she's like, I'd really want some clothes first, so they go to Rika's. And Rika lives in one of the temples nearby. And also, the police guy apparently went missing too, so there's that. And the kid is, like, freaking out, because he's like, oh god, when I wish people to die, they do. And she's like, don't talk about my uncle, though. And he's like, actually, I killed him. She's like, no, don't talk about my uncle. Put me down. You're crazy. And tells him to go home. And she's like, okay, well, I'm just gonna go get some clothes from Rika. And then he sees a bunch of crows going, caw-caw, up on the box on the stairs. And he's like, oh, that's weird. So he goes up there, and, oh god, we see a dead body, actually. Who could it be? It's Rika! Woohoo! And her insides are all torn out, and so he freaks out and starts attacking the crows, and then while attacking the crows, he drops the axe in her blood. Because of course he does.
Yeah, because of course he does.
Yep.
And then other girl walks up, and she's like, oh my god, you killed her, and she doesn't believe him when he's like, no, I didn't. And then there's a chase scene. It's a very dramatic chase scene. And it goes on for a very long time.
And by very dramatic, you mean, like, not at all dramatic? And they're, like, they're, like, kind of walking slightly faster than usual.
Yes. Yes.
And talking, like, calmly. So...
Yeah, it's so... God. It's just like, hey, like, slow down a little bit, I can't keep up with you, sort of chase scene.
Yeah.
So they get to a bridge. And then she trips and falls, and she's like, oh no, Rika! And she's like, why do you have that axe? So he's like, fuck it, and throws it off the bridge. And she's like, no, I'm still not okay with you, because you could choke me out, you're bigger than me and stronger than me. And he's like, okay, well, let's put my hands behind my head. And she's like, I don't think you're bad, just possessed. Because one time I climbed on a roof, and that was bad, and I went into this place while playing hide and seek with my friends, and it's a room full of, like, torture devices, and no one can find me here during hide and seek, so I'm gonna actually try to climb out, because this is kind of cheating. And then she broke the arm of one of the statues in there, the religious statue, and she's like, oh no, I've cursed everything forever. And Rika got the blame for the statue being broken as well. So since she fucked that up, things got really weird. Her brother, who loved her, ran away, and she thought protagonist would be a good would be a good replacement, but now he's cursed. So she's like, okay, well, I'm gonna deal with this, and shoves him off the bridge. But he caught a rope on the side, and she's like, no, I really want you to die, and I really want you to give me back my brother, because I'm just insane now. And she's like wiggling the bridge to try to get him to let go, and he's like, please don't. But then he finally falls, and there he goes. And while he's dropping down, he wishes everyone in the world around him, in the city around him, to die. And then we cut to a person in a bar eating food, and there was apparently a disaster on the news, and a bunch of people were dying in their sleep in the area that literally everything was happening with Protagonist, and it was a poisonous gas from a volcano or underground vent that hit the entire area, so everyone is dead. So his wish came true, but actually one person survived, and it's is it Keiichi?
Keiichi.
It's Protagonist,
Keiichi.
isn't it? Isn't
Yeah,
that him?
Yeah, it's Protagonist. I was just trying to actually say his name.
Keiichi.
Keiichi. Because maybe he was in the river or just luck. I don't know. He's alive, and then that's the episode.
Boom.
Cool. So everyone's dead.
Yeah.
Yep.
So that arc doesn't really have too much to say aside from like Satoko. Like, exactly what Deer said. Satoko. Her uncle comes back into town. He's abusive. It pisses Keiichi off. He like kind of goes off the rails. Kills her uncle. It is mentioned. Like she said, you're possessed. Stop acting like you're Keiichi is like the big thing there. Because of Oyashiro-sama. So, which is the curse that's talked about throughout the series. That's pretty neat.
It's talked about but never explained.
Oh.
Until like, well,
weird.
I mean it is. Then like the last episode, I think.
Not in any episode we watched.
Yeah.
We'll get to it. I'll talk about that.
When I mean explained, I don't mean like we're not given like a backstory of like it all started when this person did this and then a witch was like, I cursed the village for 100 years. I mean like explained as in I have no fucking clue what this curse actually is.
I know
what
you
it
don't.
does.
And by the end of season 1...
I just know that it exists.
Yeah.
And it's a thing that everyone talks about.
Yeah, well here's the thing, right? So by the end of season 1, we don't fully know.
Yeah.
So, like I said...
Anyway.
They do kind of explain what it does in, like, the last 2 episodes, like, in the cave area, but, like, that's about it.
Anyway.
Episode
20. People have died!
Mwah!
Duh! We get more exposition. People have died. Someone's clawing out their own throat. The news wouldn't air stuff going on about it because of about the curse. The curse! And my family pressures the police to make sure no information gets out. This is all from Green Hair Girl, talking to Protagonist on the phone. And then I desperately tried to keep up with all this information being dumped at the point. And I've gone, okay, she starts talking about the curse, and she's like, the curse affects the villagers during some type of festival at night, but... And then I gave up trying to keep typing it all, so it's like, that's all we get. So she tells him stuff, and then she hangs up on him, and Protagonist is like, but... And then she's like, okay, I've got to call someone else now. She calls someone else and talks to them. I didn't write down what the conversation was, because I don't think I cared. Anyway, we cut to her. She's got a man chained up in some sort of building and is, like, interrogating him. And this is where we get exposition scene number 272, where she's like, yo, what happened to Satoshi? And he's like, he's not alive. Stop thinking he's alive. Like, I really don't think he's alive. And she's like, I'm gonna choke you. Tell me what I want while I choke your air pipes so you can't talk properly. And then it's like, yo, no, he ain't alive because he wasn't erased because he killed his aunt. And then the guy's like, but I thought the guy who killed his aunt was caught and it was just some drug dealer or some shit. And then it's like, members of the old alliance know about what's going on, and then I tried to keep up, but that's all I wrote, and I was just like, it's some Illuminati bullshit, I don't know, I can't keep up with this. Anyway, she walks out, and she's like, okay, I guess she lives in some underground mole man lair, with, like, prisons everywhere, and then she goes to some bottomless pit, and is like, Satoshi, are you at the bottom of this pit for some reason? And she just kneels down and her torch falls behind her, and it casts a shadow, but she thinks it looks like him for some reason. And this is where, see, he's not dead, because we see him, because it's her shadow. And so she's like, I love you, I want to be with you forever. And he's like, no, you've got to live. Don't die. She's like, but I want to be with you. I'm gonna take a leap of faith and be with you. And he's like, you're gonna fucking die if you do that. Don't do that. And then she accidentally kicks the torch, and he goes away. And she's like, no, don't go. Anyway, we go back to her walking in the underground area, and there's a girl who looks just like her, I think. I can't really tell. Who's also locked up. And she's like, hey, I'm angry at you. And the girl's like, no. I can't remember what they were writing about, because I guess I just didn't care enough to write down what they were talking about.
They were talking about why she didn't try to protect Satoshi.
Okay. Anyway, she goes to sleep, I guess. Then everyone's in the village is alive again, I guess. The whole volcanic thing is resolved, or didn't happen, or was a dream, or did happen, but it's a time loop, or I don't know. It's not explained to me in the episodes we watched, so I don't really care. I have no idea what the stakes are, or how any of this works, or what the mechanics or rules are of any of this, so it's like, okay. Anyway, so everyone's alive, I guess, again. The little girl that was killed by the crows is alive again as well, and apparently is the head of, like, some house or organization or some shit. Don't tell me what it actually is, I don't care. And the green-haired girl is like, you know what's going on, like, you're the head of this thing, and you should take better responsibility and harm these kittens. And she's like, there's 4 bad kittens, nyah. And she's like, I punished 2 of them. She's like, you should let the other 2 kittens off, nyah. And the girl's like, no, I'm gonna kill those kittens. That's the end of that. So Green Girl is at home now, and she's like lost her mind because she's like stabbing the ground with a knife that she's got, paranoid for all fuck. And she's like, ah! And then she comes to her senses and is like, this is, I've got this, I'm in control. And then, ding dong, it's the little girl, and she's like, I've got a big bottle, I want some soy sauce. She's like, okay, give me the bottle. She's like, no, I want to come in and get it. She's like, okay. And then they're walking in, and she's like, wow, you're following my footsteps exactly, so I can't hear your footsteps. It's like, whoa, that's something. Anyway, she pulls a panel in the floor to reveal where the soy sauce bottles are. And then the little girl's like, I want all the soy sauce bottles, and yeah, and pulls out a needle and starts walking towards her. But, sprays green-haired girl with a bug spray. Green-haired girl's like, bug spray, no! And the little girl pulls out the needle and is like, I'm gonna stab you with this. And green-haired girl's like, bitch, you thought! And flips her over. And, like, we get this Mexican standoff with her with a taser and this tiny child with a needle and a bug spray can. And then green-haired girl kicks the newspapers in the air and scares little girl as she tases her, grabs her needle and stabs her with it. And is like, how do you like that? Them apples. And little girl's like, don't fucking stab me! You were meant to be stabbed and blah 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 blah. Green-haired girl's like, I'm gonna get off on torturing you now. You're gonna come to my dungeon and I'm gonna torture you for hours and hours. I'm gonna get off to it. It's gonna be so much fun. And the little girl's like, nah, grabs a knife and just kills herself. She's like, you can't torture me. I quit. And then we get zoom, 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 on the green-haired girl. And it's like, the phone's ringing. And it's the other girl, Satoko, and she's like, hey, is the other little girl there? She went to get soy sauce and she isn't back yet. And green-haired girl's like, well, she's here, but I've made so much food. She's just gonna eat dinner here. You know what? I've made so much. Zoom, zoom, zoom. You should come over too. And then end credits. And that's the end of the episode.
Yep. So you can assume that Satoko gets fucking weighted.
Yeah. No, it's like Kill Bill. We get like a final showdown.
No, Satoko gets weighted. and then she weighted her twin sister too. And then she shows up to Keiichi's house, and then she stabs him in the stomach, and then she accidentally falls off a ledge and dies.
So, I'm gonna just say straight up, if I watched all of this, I might like it, but just going off the 3 episodes I watched, I'm preempting it with saying this before Dia says anything. Just going off the 3 episodes that I watched, I absolutely hated this.
Okay.
I
mean, that was a little bit obvious.
I was not, like, because it was so disjointed with, like, oh, by the way, at the end of this episode, everyone's dead except our main protagonist, and then the next episode, it's like, by the way, the next episode we watched, it's like, we're not following the protagonist anymore,
Spooky.
we're following this other girl who was a side character, and it's like...
Go ahead and explain what you were going to explain.
You can.
Oh no, I'll wait.
Okay, well...
Explain it.
I'm gonna kind of explain the series overall, so that's why I'm like, it's gonna take a minute. So
yeah.
if you want me to explain now, I can. Okay.
Do it.
Okay. So, basically to start off, from what we know from watching it as you go through, these mysterious murders happen, and it always happens on the night of the Cotton Drifting Festival. It always takes place over the course of, like, I know it's in the month of June. I don't know how long, maybe a couple weeks or something. But anyway, there's a festival, and there's a curse connected to it, where one person will die, one person will get demoned away. And it all started because back in the day, there was supposed to be a dam construction that was supposed to flood the town, and basically a bunch of townspeople got together and, like, protested, and then, like, some murders happened. And ever since, there's been the curse. And normally the people who die were somehow involved with the dam project. At least at first. And I mean, even some of the later ones are too. I can't fully remember. But anyway, so through the whole thing, they always reference Oyashiro-sama, who's like the god of this village. And they also mention that essentially he was a human-eating demon, like thousands of years ago or whatever, right? So through the whole thing, they talk about Oyashiro-sama's curse and how these murders happen, and you see characters like in that first episode we watched, you know, with like the demon eyes, very possessed. So yeah,
they're demon cat eyes.
Yeah, so murders ensue, and then after all of that happens, you wake up and the 2 weeks have reset themselves, or whatever amount of time it is, and everybody's fine. And that's like one of the big mysteries throughout the first season is like, what the fuck is going on here? Like, why are these characters dying and then suddenly they're back?
So, okay. So the curse is, you get possessed. Someone gets possessed, and then for a period of time they go around killing people, and then that time gets reset.
Yeah, so basically the curse itself is one person dies, one person gets spirited away. The possession type thing is kind of the explanation for how the people die and how the people like disappear. So
okay.
Yes.
So the consequence. So when everything gets reset, one person still has died and one person still has mysteriously disappeared.
They're alive again once it gets reset until the night of the Cotton Drifting Festival again. And the victims can change.
So basically, it's a curse where something happens, and then that thing never happened.
Kind of.
Well, if it's something that happens in a
yes.
set period, say curse start.
Yes.
Person 1 goes around killing 5 people. End time curse.
Yes.
Everyone's back alive again. Everything's back to normal.
Whenever the time resets, nobody remembers anything that's
It's
happened.
Groundhog Day, basically,
Yes.
without one
So
person.
So does anyone remember that what's happened? Does, like, the person who committed the murders remember doing the murders? Because if not, it's like,
no.
I don't understand what the conflict here
So,
is.
no, but that doesn't mean that no characters remember.
Okay, so some people do remember it.
Yes. Yes.
Because I'm just trying to... I'm just trying to understand it, because it's like, what's the... Like, I understand, like,
Right.
characters wanting to end it, but, like,
Right.
if it's, like... If it's this curse where everything resets at the end of it,
Yes.
it's like, what are the stakes then?
One character
like-
always remembers. You don't know who it is in season 1, which is a big part of the... You know, I said season 1's the what the fuck, and season 2's the oh, that's what the fuck? That's why.
Because yeah, I guess my thing is, like, if
Yeah.
that's the case, then the stakes are
Yeah.
like, oh, something... We should probably do something about this, but, like, it's not really worth getting terrified.
Right.
And
No,
like,
they...
it doesn't really elicit the level of drama that the show was giving off
Yeah.
to me.
No, I 100% get what you're saying. But yeah, no, they don't remember. There are times where there are glimpses of memory that you see in the main character.
The main character remembering him going around with an axe murdering people.
Well, no, that happened in his...
That actually happened?
Oh yeah, no, in the timeline he legitimately beats Satoko's uncle to death.
Okay.
So, but anyway, so each arc is focusing on a different character through the whole thing. So it's like the first arc is like just kind of the setup arc where it's like Keiichi and mostly Reina and Mion. The second arc is focused entirely on Mion and her twin sister Shion. And then, like, Satoko gets an arc, and so on and so forth. So, most of the series is working through that. There's some, like, backstory stuff sprinkled throughout, just basically slowly revealing things to you so you can start making connections. And then you get to the final arc where events that happened in the first arc happen again, but with Rena instead of Keiichi being kind of the protag.
Okay.
And
that's kind of what I thought it was, but I was like,
Well,
I don't have enough information to
Oh,
really think
that wasn't
is
Rena,
actually
that was
what's going on.
Shion. We didn't watch anything from the last arc, because if I showed you any episode of the last arc out of context, it would have been, like, way too fucking
Okay, well then,
much.
Because the last episode,
Yeah.
I kind of got the vibe of, like, okay, the protagonist seems to be acting normal again, so is this, like, a case where
Yeah.
now we're following this character that's going through the curse or whatever, and now we're following this character that's going through it?
Yeah, so
I guess
the
not,
last
then.
episode we watched actually was a flashback arc. It happened, it took place, it's actually the second arc. It's just when you watch the second arc, you assume it's Mion doing the killing, and this is from Shion's point of view, and she's actually the one doing it. The latter half of the series, and one big complaint I do have about it, is the latter half is very flashback heavy. It's very, like, here's a thing that happened in the past. And while I don't dislike it, I wish it would have been more balanced instead of, like, here's... This whole, like, giant section is just gonna be, like, here's shit that's happened before. I would have preferred it to be a little more sprinkled throughout. But yeah, the big thing with that arc is, just that Mion and Shion as characters, it's like a big developing thing for them. But the final arc with Rena is basically her trying to figure out what's going on, and from her conclusions, she thinks that Oyashiro-sama's curse isn't actually a demon's curse, that it's actually alien parasites that are essentially making people go crazy. And then Keiichi, that's when we get a glimpse of Keiichi remembers the first arc when he killed Rena and Mion. And he remembers that the paranoia, the reason he couldn't find the needle is because there wasn't a fucking needle. that was like extreme paranoia hallucinations, because once once your brain has become so infected with whatever the fuck this is, you start to hallucinate, you start to go crazy, and that's why he scratched his throat out at the end of the first arc. It's because his brain is so far gone at that point. So that's why, like, in that first arc, it's like, I told you, at the end, like, they're holding him down, they have, like, a syringe. He thinks back on it and realizes, like, that's not what happened at all. It was, like, a marker, and they were just, like, doing something they did in, like, their club activities together as, like, a quote-unquote punishment game they would, like, draw on your face. And, like, the needle isn't... Like, the needle was never there, or the needle in the food was never there or anything. So, yeah. The issue with the final arc is... That's in that arc, Rena is the one going insane, and we're getting her point of view. So it's not like a real truthful point of view, and Rena's also not a character that knows what's going on. Because there is only... There's technically more than one character that we can assume knows what's going on, but of the main characters, there's only one character that, like, knows what's going on.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
This also only happens in this tiny little village, by the way.
Yeah, it's a very small
I
village.
assumed as much because of like the way because we got a glimpse of someone outside the village with the whole volcanic ash thing at the end of that one episode where they're like, "Hey, the entire village is dead except one kid. Oh, TV's dead."
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like, what happened to that? It's like, oh, it's like,
Yeah.
okay, so. It's very clearly localized to just this village.
Yeah, and the issue comes up where if you move away, it can start to have effects on you, which is why Rena busted out all the windows of her school and stuff and said she was, like, seeing Oyashiro at night. It's because moving away has effects on you also.
Yep.
So.
I mean, the more I hear about this, the more I'm like, okay, now that, like, the mystery is starting to unfold for me, it's like, inside my head, it's like, you know what, I didn't like this, but, like, hey, at least there's some sort of mystery to, like, I'm kind of vaguely interested in, but it's like, now that I know more about it, it's like, I don't care.
I mean, there's only so much we can do with 3 episodes, especially with this.
Yeah.
I know, but, like, even just hearing about it, it's like the way that this curse or whatever kind of may or may not work, it's like, it feels like so much is withheld, and, like, a lot of the show feels like it's not the story itself that is the draw for it, but how the story is told that's the draw for it.
I don't think that's a bad thing, though.
I'm not saying... No, I'm not saying that's good or bad. I'm just saying that's the star attraction of the show. Like, I'm not saying...
Okay.
Like, that's why I'm saying, like, I still probably don't really care about it, is, like, because it's, like, the story itself, now that I know more about it, doesn't really seem that interesting to me. Like, the mystery, it's like, well, one character knows everything still from all these time loops or whatever you want to call it, and it's like, so?
Yeah, well...
It's like, okay...
That's a lot of, like I said, where Season 2 comes in, and there's a lot of, not explaining, obviously, on purpose, because I'm only explaining Season 1
Yeah,
things.
because they're wanting to explain it later on,
Yeah.
which I understand, but it's like, that's why, like, especially with the way you're saying the last act folds out, where it's like, you're following this one character, and she's an unreliable narrator, and we follow her descent through it all. It's like, okay, I get it. I get what the show is. The show is more about how the story's told, not what the story actually is. What the story is important, but it's not as important as how they're telling you it.
Yeah. No, I can see what you're saying there, for sure.
And I guess my thing is, like, from the 3 episodes that I've watched, I'm not really that big a fan of how they're telling the story either. Because it's like, there's scenes where stuff happens, but so much of it is just expositional dialogue of like back and forth, shot, reverse shot, shot, reverse shot. Tell me what's going on. No, this happened. No, this happened. No, this happened. Zoom, zoom, zoom. I mean, it was borderline comical, especially at the very end, where it was like, zoom, 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 you should come over.
Yeah. That's part of it just being a product of its time.
Yeah, I believe this... I forget when this was made.
It released in 2006.
Wait, are you saying this was a mid-noughties anime? I never would have guessed.
What?
Wait,
what'd you just say?
What do you mean mid-90s?
Mid-noughties.
Oh.
I thought you... Yeah, I was confused.
So, I was gonna just bring up that, because I didn't get a second, 10 out of 10, this is one of my favorite animes.
Oh, you gave 10 out of 10? I give Higurashi probably like an 8. Probably like an 8.
This is one of the few animes that I was just, like, dumbfounded by as a kid, and I was just like, hell yeah, like, I'm down, I'm here for it, let's go.
No, I really like the first... I like the first season way more with the context of the second season, which is why we're gonna watch a few episodes of that too. We do have a main character change in the second season, by the way. The main character becomes the character who knows what the fuck is happening. And that's when we get a little more into the content that I personally like. This is a series based on visual novels. So there is information that's in visual novels that they couldn't fit into the anime. Which, I mean, is just kind of what happens, you know? You can't really help that. But yeah, I don't know. I think my favorite part of the series is, like, experiencing season 1, watching season 2, and then being like, oh, okay, like, I get this stuff now, and then doing, like, almost a deep dive into the wiki, because I haven't played the fucking visual novels. But there's a lot, I don't know, I think there's a lot of, like, super interesting content in it, and then if you want to get really fucking crazy, you can read, Umi Neko When They Cry, which I haven't done yet, but I have friends who have done, and I'm planning on doing it soon. Yeah?
Umi Neko, I've seen people talk about that.
Wow. It's almost like it's everyone's favorite thing by this guy.
Oh, yeah, this has been recommended to me before.
To play or to play or to watch? If anyone recommended you watch it, okay, I was gonna say. Why
would people recommend me watch shit? They don't recommend me watch anime.
Okay, fair. From my understanding, the best way to really experience... Well, I don't know. I think visual novel's fine. I think the manga's probably, like, the best way to experience Umi Neko, and you never want to fucking watch it. So if you want an even bigger understanding of the series, then you also get all of the context of Umi Neko, and apparently it makes your context of Higurashi completely fucking different. Like, apparently, like, the groundwork is laid, and you're like, oh, okay, so this is, like, there's more to it. He connects all of his universes, which I think is pretty cool. I mean, it doesn't change it to an insane amount, but it contextualizes a lot of things and makes you understand things better, and then once you understand those things, you're like, oh, okay, got it. But this is definitely, I mean, all of his stuff is, like, things that you commit time to. And I guess if you don't like that, if you don't like series where you're like, okay, I'm gonna commit time to this, you probably wouldn't like it. But I think as far as series that you do want to spend a lot of time in one universe, it's, like, perfect. There's just so much.
The thing to me is, like, spending time in a universe is really dependent on how sort of interesting and inviting that universe actually is.
Yeah, and I mean,
like, if the universe isn't appealing to you, you're not going to be like, oh, this is set in that universe of that property that I found kind of underwhelming. oh boy!
Oh, no, I get that 100%. And I mean, that's really the case with, like, any show or anything, right? It's like, if you don't like it, you don't like it, that's fine. I'm just saying for anybody, if you do like that kind of stuff, this is like the series for you, as long as you like murder mystery. As I like to call series like this, good edge, because it's really edgy.
I hate that now I'm like, god damn it. Umineko was on my fucking list of like things to eventually get to and play, but now I'm like kind of dreading it.
Oh no, I wouldn't dread it. It's very different, but the same as Higurashi.
That's the thing to me. It's like, it's different but like similar. So I'm like, I don't even know if it's going to hurt me.
The big issue I think with recommending just Umineko is I feel like you almost want to play through Higurashi first. I don't know if it's necessary. I'll have to like talk to friends who've like read through Umineko, but
yeah,
I don't know.
Anyway, I'd give this a -1, because to me the only redeeming features that I found interesting or worth watching for was the hilarious editing bits, like the fucking zooms. Every time there was a zoom, it made me laugh.
Oh yeah, no, the zooms are fucking hilarious.
It was so dumb, so bad. I fucking couldn't stop laughing. The rest of it, it's like, the speed at which information was delivered made it impossible to keep up.
Yeah.
Like, if it was delivered slower, or if, like, information was delivered more efficiently through dialogue or even through action scenes, like, it would have been a lot easier for me to stay interested and stay engaged. But, like, through a lot of those, like, second episode and third episode was, like, exposition started. I'm like, okay, I'm gonna try this time to understand. It's like, blah, 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 blah. It's like, okay, what's that? What's this? Okay, this is very clearly something I should know. This is very clearly something I shouldn't know yet. And it's like, I give up.
I guess I should say the exposition is told a lot slower, and a lot of what you saw was more refresher than anything. Or just, like, offhand mentioning it. I guess, like I said, the big issue with that is it's 3 episodes. So I just kind of have to be like, okay, this one says this, let's go with it. Versus, like, hey, here's slow exposition.
That's why you have to take everything I'm saying, like, the caveat asterisk of,
I totally get that.
Because I only watched 3 episodes.
No, and like I said, I totally get that. This is a series, it's super hard to,
but yeah, even like, even then, I'm like, I still don't want to go back and watch all the other episodes, or even just watch it in order, because it's like, Anyway, that's been anime.
Yeah.
What's your anime? Anime.
Figure out sometime when you revisit Higurashi.
Anime.
So, anime.
Can we make it, like, at least, like, a few months before we revisit it, so I can, like, get it out of my mind, so I don't go in, like, jaded and, like, still thinking kind of annoyed about it?
Yeah, no, I mean...
So, like, I come back and it's like, oh yeah, that! It's out of my mind now, so I can go in fresh and try and give it a better shot this time.
Yeah, I wasn't planning on doing it, like, instantly or anything.
Okay, good. But yeah, anyway, thank you all for listening and coming along to our TED Talk. We won't be back, because this podcast is actually going to loop at the end and it's going to go back to the beginning, and only one of the 3 of us is going to remember that it's looped.
It'll be me.
It'll be spooky. Spoilers for season 2 of the podcast. It's spooky. Also, I killed Deer.
Oh no.
Well.
But don't worry, Deer will be back when you re-listen to this podcast episode.
Nice.
Gasp. Okay, bye everyone.
See you.
Bye.